The autumn of 1993 arrives at Westfield Academy like a perfectly orchestrated production, complete with manicured lawns that stretch across rolling hills, Gothic stone buildings that whisper of old money traditions, and students who carry themselves like they own the world because their families actually do. This elite preparatory school in Connecticut's countryside serves as a playground for America's most privileged teenagers, where family names carry more weight than report cards, and social status determines everything from lunch table seating to college acceptance letters. Two families have dominated Westfield's social hierarchy for 3 generations, their rivalry as deeply rooted as the ancient oak trees that shade the campus courtyards. The Montagues represent old-world elegance and intellectual superiority. Their patriarch, William Montague, serves on the school's board of directors while running his investment banking empire from Manhattan's financial district. The family crest adorns their Beacon Hill mansion, their Martha's Vineyard summer estate, and their children's blazer pockets. A silver lion holding a golden quill that symbolizes both strength and scholarly pursuit. The Capulets embody new money power and political influence. Senator Richard Capulet built his fortune through strategic real estate investments and carefully cultivated political connections, transforming his family from middle-class climbers into American royalty within a single generation. Their symbol, an eagle clutching lightning bolts, appears on everything from their Connecticut estate's iron gates to their private jet's tail fin, representing swift action and unwavering dominance. The feud ignited during the 1960 seconds, when both William Montague and Richard Capulet pursued the same Harvard Business School valedictorian, Catherine Pemberton. She chose William, and their marriage became a merger of 2 established East Coast dynasties. Richard never forgave the rejection, channeling his humiliation into a lifelong mission to surpass the Montagues in wealth, influence, and social standing. What began as wounded pride evolved into generational warfare fought through corporate boardrooms, charity galas, and their children's academic achievements. Romeo Montague glides through Westfield's hallways like a prince in exile, his tall, lean frame draped in the school's mandatory uniform navy blazer, with the Westfield crest, crisp white Oxford shirt, perfectly knotted silk tie, and pleated khakis that cost more than most families spend on groceries. His dark hair falls across his forehead in carefully casual waves, and his deep brown eyes hold a dreamy quality that suggests his thoughts wander far beyond calculus equations and Latin conjugations. At 17, he possesses the kind of understated handsomeness that makes teachers forgive late assignments and makes girls write his name in their diary margins. Unlike his older sister Beatrice, who embraces every aspect of their family's expectations, student council president, debate team captain, early admission to Yale, Romeo finds himself questioning the prescribed path of privilege. He writes melancholic poetry in leather-bound journals, sketches, portraits during economics lectures, and dreams of backpacking through Europe instead of attending Harvard Business School. His rebellion manifests in small ways, letting his hair grow slightly longer than regulations permit, wearing vintage band t-shirts under his blazer, and dating girls his parents consider unsuitable. Currently, his unsuitable obsession focuses on Rosaline Capulet's best friend, a striking brunette named Elena, who transfers between Westfield and her parents' Swiss boarding school, depending on their diplomatic assignments. She possesses the kind of international sophistication that makes other Westfield girls seem provincial by comparison. Speaking 4 languages fluently, and referencing art galleries in cities most students can only find on maps, she's completely out of your league, and you know it. His best friend Benvolio warns, as they walk across the campus quad, their leather dress shoes clicking against centuries-old brick pathways. Benvolio Montague, Romeo's cousin and closest confidant, inherited the family's practical wisdom without their romantic inclinations. His blonde hair stays perpetually neat, his uniforms remain wrinkle-free, and his grades hover consistently in the top 5%. Elena Patterson dates college guys. Specifically, college guys who sail competitively and summer in the Hamptons. Romeo adjusts his backpack authentic leather from a Milan boutique, naturally and sighs dramatically. The September afternoon sun filters through maple leaves just beginning their transformation from green to gold, casting dappled shadows across the stone archways that connect the academic buildings. Students gather in carefully choreographed social clusters. The athletes claiming the steps of the gymnasium, the theater kids congregating near the arts building, and the academic elite positioning themselves prominently on the library steps, where everyone can admire their obvious intelligence. Maybe she'll notice something different about me, Romeo says, though his voice lacks conviction. Hope springs eternal in teenage hearts, even those cushioned by trust funds and family connections. Maybe today she'll actually remember my name. Right after she remembers her own, Benvolio replies, but his tone carries affection rather than mockery. He understands his cousin's romantic nature, even if he doesn't share it. Come on. We'll be late for advanced placement literature. And Mrs. Henderson already thinks you're distracted. The classroom building's interior showcases Westfield's commitment to traditional excellence. Oil paintings of distinguished alumni line the hallways. Persian rugs soften the marble floors. And tall windows offer views of perfectly maintained gardens, where groundskeepers work invisibly to maintain the illusion of natural beauty. Students move between classes with practiced efficiency, their conversations revealing concerns about SAT prep courses, summer internships at their parents' companies, and upcoming social events where family reputation carries more weight than personal merit. Romeo's literature class occupies a corner room where afternoon light illuminates dust motes, dancing above antique wooden desks. Mrs. Henderson, a formidable woman in her 50s who earned her doctorate from Oxford and tolerates no nonsense from privileged teenagers, has arranged the seating alphabetically, a democratic gesture that forces Montagues and Capulets into uncomfortable proximity. 3 rows ahead of Romeo sits Juliet Capulet, though he barely notices her presence amidst his Elena-induced daydreams. At nearly 14 young, even for Westfield's accelerated program, Juliet possesses an ethereal beauty that seems almost accidental, as if she hasn't yet realized the power her appearance holds. Her honey blonde hair falls in soft waves past her shoulders, restrained by a simple navy ribbon that matches her uniform. Her green eyes, bright as spring leaves, focus intently on Mrs. Henderson's discussion of Shakespeare's sonnets, while her delicate hands take meticulous notes in handwriting that looks like calligraphy. Unlike the other Capulet children who attend Westfield, Juliet carries herself without the aggressive confidence that typically marks their family. She speaks softly when called upon, her voice carrying a musical quality that makes even mundane observations about iambic pentameter sound like poetry. Her blazer fits perfectly tailored, like everything in her wardrobe, by her mother's personal seamstress, but she wears it unconsciously, more focused on academic excellence than social positioning. Miss Capulet, Mrs. Henderson's crisp British accent cuts through the afternoon drowsiness. Would you care to share your interpretation of Sonnet 116? Juliet straightens in her chair, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. I believe Shakespeare argues that true love remains constant despite external changes. She begins, her voice gaining strength as she continues. The poem suggests that love isn't really love if it alters when circumstances become difficult. It's like a lighthouse that guides ships safely home, regardless of storms. Her cousin, Tybalt Capulet, seated in the back row with the other seniors, rolls his eyes dramatically. Tybalt embodies everything the Capulet name represents: aggressive ambition wrapped in designer clothing. His dark hair is slicked back with expensive pomade, his blazer fits like armor, and his eyes burn with the intensity of someone who views every interaction as a potential battle to be won. He excels at lacrosse, drives a BMW his father bought him for his 17th birthday, and considers intellectual discussions a waste of time better spent networking or working out. How romantic, Tybalt mutters. Loud enough for his friends to hear but quiet enough to avoid Mrs. Henderson's attention. Little Jules still believes in fairy tales. Mrs. Henderson, however, notices everything. Mr. Capulet, perhaps you'd like to share your more sophisticated interpretation? Tybalt's jaw tightens. Being called out by a teacher, even one as respected as Mrs. Henderson, threatens his carefully cultivated image of untouchable superiority. I think Shakespeare was being unrealistic, he says, his voice carrying the confident tone of someone accustomed to deference. Love changes. People change. Promising eternal constancy is just setting yourself up for disappointment. An interesting perspective, Mrs. Henderson replies neutrally, though her expression suggests she finds Tybalt's cynicism more troubling than insightful. Miss Capulet, how would you respond to your cousin's interpretation? Juliet glances back at Tybalt, her expression gentle but unwavering. I think the poem acknowledges that people face challenges and changes, she says carefully. but it suggests that real love helps people grow together rather than apart. It's not about never changing, it's about changing in harmony with someone else. Romeo, jolted from his Elena fantasies by the passion in Juliet's voice, finds himself really looking at her for the first time. Something about her earnestness, her complete lack of artifice, strikes him as remarkable in an environment where authenticity is as rare as financial aid students. She speaks about love with the conviction of someone who still believes in its transformative power, despite living in a world that treats emotion like weakness and relationships like business transactions. The bell's sharp ring interrupts his observation, sending students rushing toward their next classes in a carefully controlled chaos of designer backpacks and hurried conversations. Romeo gathers his materials slowly, still thinking about Juliet's words, when Benvolio appears at his elbow. "Earth to Romeo," Benvolio says, snapping his fingers playfully. "You're staring at a Capulet. That's like social suicide with a side of actual family drama." "I wasn't staring," Romeo protests, though his denial lacks conviction. "I was just listening to her answer about the sonnet." "Uh-huh." Benvolio's expression suggests he's not buying the excuse. "Come on, we need to get to physics before Mr. Morrison starts his lecture on thermodynamics. And try to focus on Elena if you must daydream, at least she's not genetically programmed to hate our entire bloodline." As they navigate the hallway crowds, Romeo catches sight of Juliet walking with her best friend, a tall, confident girl named Maria who serves as her social translator in Westfield's complex hierarchy. Maria whispers something that makes Juliet laugh. A sound like silver bells that somehow carries over the general noise of student conversation and locker slamming. The Capulets are throwing their annual autumn gala this Saturday, Benvolio mentions casually as they climb the stairs toward the science wing. "Father got the invitation yesterday. Apparently they're celebrating Juliet's acceptance into the National Honor Society early." Romeo's pulse quickens. The Capulet Autumn Gala represents one of Westfield's most exclusive social events, where parents network over champagne while their children engage in carefully supervised socializing. Attendance requires both invitation and impeccable behavior. Any scandal reflects not just on the individual, but on their entire family legacy. "Are we going?" Romeo asks, trying to sound casual while his imagination conjures images of Elena in formal wear. "Of course we're going," Benvolio replies. "It would be diplomatically impossible to decline." "But Romeo..." He stops walking and turns to face his cousin seriously. "Promise me you'll behave yourself. No dramatic declarations of love, no public poetry recitations, and definitely no pursuing girls who barely know you exist." Romeo nods absently, already planning his approach to Elena at the gala. He doesn't notice Juliet passing them in the stairwell, her arms full of advanced textbooks that would challenge most seniors. She glances at him briefly, something flickering in her green eyes, curiosity perhaps, or recognition of a kindred romantic spirit. Neither realizes that Saturday's gala will change everything, transforming their family's ancient hatred into something far more dangerous. A love story that will challenge every assumption about loyalty, tradition, and the price of following your heart in a world that values conformity above all else. Saturday evening arrives with the crisp promise of autumn in Connecticut, where the Capulet estate sprawls across 50 manicured acres like a testament to American ambition made manifest. The Georgian mansion rises 4 stories into the darkening sky, its countless windows glowing warmly against the approaching night. Luxury cars wind along the circular driveway, Mercedes sedans, BMW coupes, and the occasional Rolls-Royce depositing Westfield's elite families beneath a portico supported by marble columns that wouldn't look out of place in ancient Athens. Inside, the grand ballroom transforms into a showcase of tasteful opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across polished hardwood floors, while arrangements of white orchids and burgundy roses create sophisticated focal points throughout the space. A string quartet occupies one corner, their classical melodies providing an elegant soundtrack to conversations conducted in carefully modulated voices. Servers in black tie attire navigate between guests, offering champagne to adults and sparkling cider to the younger attendees, all served in crystal glasses that catch and reflect the warm light. Juliet stands near the French doors leading to the garden terrace, feeling simultaneously at home and completely displaced in her own house. Her gown, selected by her mother after consultations with 3 different stylists, flows around her like liquid moonlight. The pale silver silk brings out the green in her eyes and makes her blonde hair seem almost luminous in the chandelier light. Pearl earrings, a family heirloom passed down through 3 generations of Capulet women, complete her ensemble. Despite her ethereal appearance, Juliet feels like an actress playing a role she never auditioned for. Around her, conversations flow like carefully choreographed performances. Parents discussing mergers and acquisitions, siblings comparing SAT scores and college prospects, peers engaging in social maneuvering disguised as casual chat. She smiles when appropriate, nods at the right moments, and offers polite responses to compliments about her academic achievements. "You look absolutely radiant, darling." Her mother, Patricia Capulet, glides over in a navy blue cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her blonde hair, the same shade as Juliet's but maintained through expensive salon visits, sits perfectly styled, and her smile never wavers despite the calculation behind her eyes. "Senator Williams was just telling me how impressed he is with your early admission to the National Honor Society. His daughter didn't achieve that until her junior year." Juliet accepts the praise graciously, while internally cringing at the competitive undertone. Every achievement becomes ammunition in her parents' social warfare. Every academic success transformed into evidence of Capulet superiority. She loves learning for its own sake, the way literature opens windows into human experience, how history reveals patterns that help explain the present, the elegant logic of mathematical proofs, but her parents view education as another luxury item to display. Across the ballroom, the Montague family makes their entrance like visiting royalty, acknowledging lesser nobles. William Montague, distinguished in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, surveys the room with the confident air of someone accustomed to being the smartest person present. His wife, Eleanor, wears understated elegance like armor, a simple black gown that probably cost twice as much as flashier alternatives, diamond jewelry that whispers rather than shouts wealth. Romeo follows his parents, tugging unconsciously at his bow tie in a gesture that betrays his discomfort with formal events. His tuxedo fits impeccably. His mother insisted on Savile Row tailoring, but he wears it like a costume rather than a second skin. His dark hair is styled more carefully than usual, though a rebellious lock still falls across his forehead. He scans the crowd hopefully, searching for Elena's distinctive profile among the sea of carefully coiffed heads and designer gowns. "Remember," his mother murmurs as they pause near the receiving line, "we're here to be gracious guests, nothing more. Smile, make pleasant conversation, and avoid any topic that might create tension." "Including my opinions on anything?" Romeo asks, his tone carrying just enough humor to avoid seeming insolent. "Especially your opinions," his father replies. But his expression suggests affection rather than criticism. "Save your philosophical insights for your college essays." The receiving line moves with diplomatic efficiency, each family greeting the Capulets with practiced warmth that masks decades of carefully maintained hostility. When the Montagues reach Senator Capulet, the two patriarchs exchange handshakes that look cordial to observers, but feel like arm-wrestling matches to the participants. "William, Eleanor, so glad you could make it." Senator Capulet's politician smile never falters, though his eyes remain cold as winter stone. And Romeo, looking very mature in formal wear, "I trust your senior year is progressing well." "Very well, thank you, sir." Romeo replies, his boarding school manners automatic despite the underlying tension. Congratulations on Juliet's academic achievements. Early admission to Honor Society is quite impressive. For a moment, Senator Capulet's expression softens with genuine paternal pride. "Yes, she's quite remarkable. Juliet, come meet the Montagues properly." Juliet approaches with graceful steps that seem to barely touch the polished floor. Up close, Romeo notices details that escaped him during literature class. The way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheeks, the delicate curve of her collarbone above the gown's neckline, the intelligence that shines in her green eyes like candlelight. "It's lovely to meet you," she says, extending her hand with unconscious elegance. "I believe we share Mrs. Henderson's literature class." When Romeo takes her hand gloved in white silk that feels softer than cloud, something electric passes between them, a recognition that transcends their family's ancient animosity. Time seems to slow as their eyes meet, the ballroom noise fading to a distant hum. Neither speaks for a moment, caught in the gravity of an attraction that defies logic, tradition, and everything they've been taught about appropriate social boundaries. "Yes," Romeo finally manages, his voice slightly hoarse. "You gave a beautiful interpretation of Sonnet 116. about love remaining constant despite changes. "You were listening," Juliet says, genuine surprise coloring her voice. Most boys their age tune out during academic discussions, more interested in sports scores or party plans than Shakespeare's insights into human nature. "Always," Romeo replies, and something in his tone suggests he means more than just listening to classroom discussions. The days following the Capulet Gala pass like a fever dream for Romeo, where every mundane moment at Westfield Academy becomes charged with electric possibility. He finds himself taking longer routes between classes, hoping to catch glimpses of Juliet in the hallways. He volunteers to tutor underclassmen in literature, knowing her advanced placement means she sometimes assists Mrs. Henderson with the younger students. He even develops a sudden interest in the Academic Honor Society meetings, much to Benvolio's bewilderment. "You hate committee meetings," Benvolio observes as they walk across the campus quad on a crisp October morning. The maple trees have erupted into brilliant reds and golds, their leaves creating a natural cathedral around the stone pathways. "Last year you said you'd rather have root canal surgery than sit through another discussion about academic standards." Romeo adjusts his leather satchel, trying to appear casual despite the anticipation thrumming through his veins. "Maybe I'm developing a sense of civic responsibility," he replies, though his eyes scan the courtyard hopefully. "College applications look better with leadership activities." "Right." Benvolio's tone suggests complete disbelief. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with a certain Capulet who serves as the sophomore representative." Before Romeo can formulate a denial, Juliet appears on the library steps like a vision from a pre-Raphaelite painting. She wears her uniform with unconscious grace, the navy blazer perfectly tailored, her blonde hair caught back with a simple barrette that allows soft tendrils to frame her face. She's deep in conversation with Maria, her best friend, but something makes her look up just as Romeo passes. Their eyes meet across 20 feet of campus courtyard, and the world narrows to that single point of connection. Juliet's cheeks flush pink as autumn roses, and she offers a smile that seems to contain entire conversations they haven't yet had. Romeo responds with a grin that transforms his normally serious expression into something boyish and hopeful. The moment lasts perhaps 3 seconds, but it carries the weight of a dozen love letters. "Oh, you're completely gone," Benvolio mutters. But his tone carries affection rather than judgment. "Just please tell me you're not planning to do anything stupid like write her poetry or serenade her beneath her dormitory window." "I don't write poetry," Romeo protests, conveniently forgetting the notebook hidden in his desk drawer that's filled with verses about moonlight on golden hair and eyes like forest lakes. "Since when?" Benvolio raises an eyebrow. "You've been writing poetry since middle school." "Bad poetry, but poetry nonetheless." Their conversation is interrupted by a commotion near the student parking lot, where Tybalt Capulet holds court, surrounded by his usual entourage of lacrosse players and legacy students. His voice carries across the courtyard with the confidence of someone who's never been seriously challenged. "The problem with some families," Tybalt announces loudly, his eyes fixed meaningfully on Romeo, "is they don't know their place anymore. They think old money gives them the right to act superior, but money can't buy class or real influence." His friends laugh on cue, though some look uncomfortable with the obvious provocation. Westfield maintains strict policies against public confrontations, but Tybalt has perfected the art of verbal warfare that skirts just beneath administrative radar. Romeo feels his jaw clench, but Benvolio places a restraining hand on his arm. "He's trying to bait you," Benvolio warns quietly. "Don't give him the satisfaction." "You're right," Romeo agrees, though his hands curl into fists at his sides. "He's not worth it." But Tybalt isn't finished. "Some people," he continues, his voice carrying clearly across the courtyard, "think they can waltz into situations where they're not welcome, making inappropriate advances on girls who are way out of their league." The implication hits Romeo like a physical blow. Somehow, Tybalt knows about his interest in Juliet, which means others probably know as well. In Westfield's gossip-driven environment, secrets last about as long as New England snow in springtime. "Walk away," Benvolio urges, tightening his grip on Romeo's arm. "This isn't the time or place." Romeo nods reluctantly, but as they turn to leave, he catches sight of Juliet watching the confrontation with obvious distress. Her green eyes reflect a mixture of embarrassment and concern that makes Romeo's protective instincts flare like struck matches. That evening, Romeo sits in his dormitory room staring at his phone, Juliet's contact information glowing on the screen like a dare. He obtained her number through careful detective work, asking Maria's boyfriend about study group communications, then cross-referencing with the student directory. Now he has the digits but lacks the courage to use them. His roommate, a lacrosse player named Marcus who possesses all the sensitivity of a brick wall, offers helpful advice. Just call her, man. What's the worst that could happen? She could hang up. She could report me to the administration. She could tell her psychotic cousin. And I could end up with my head in a toilet. Romeo lists the possibilities with growing anxiety. Or she could say yes to whatever you're planning to ask her. Marcus points out reasonably. You won't know until you try. Romeo takes a deep breath and dials before he can lose his nerve. The phone rings twice before Juliet's voice comes through the speaker, soft and slightly breathless as if she'd been running. Hello? Juliet? It's Romeo. Romeo Montague. From literature class, he adds, unnecessarily, then immediately feels stupid for stating the obvious. A pause that lasts perhaps 2 seconds but feels like an eternity. Then, I was hoping you'd call. The simple admission sends warmth flooding through Romeo's chest like summer sunshine. Really? Really. Though I have to admit, I wasn't sure you'd have the nerve. I almost didn't, Romeo confesses, his natural honesty overriding his desire to appear confident. Your cousin made it pretty clear today that Montagues aren't welcome in your social circle. Juliet's sigh carries clearly through the phone. Tybalt doesn't speak for me. He thinks he's protecting the family honor, but mostly he's just protecting his own ego. Still, he's not wrong about me being out of your league, Romeo says, surprising himself with the vulnerability in his voice. That's for me to decide, isn't it? Juliet's tone carries a steel beneath the softness that suggests she's not as fragile as she appears. Besides, I don't believe in leagues. I believe in connections between people who see something worthwhile in each other. The October nights at Westfield Academy carry a crisp clarity that makes every star seem within reach, and Romeo finds himself drawn to these midnight hours, when the campus sleeps and possibilities feel infinite. 3 weeks have passed since that first phone call with Juliet. 3 weeks of carefully orchestrated encounters that feel simultaneously innocent and dangerous. They've developed an intricate system of communication notes passed through Maria, meaningful glances during shared classes, and text messages sent late at night when dormitory supervisors assume their charges are studying or sleeping. Tonight, Romeo stands beneath the ancient oak tree that grows outside Holbrook Hall, the dormitory where Juliet lives on the 3rd floor in a corner room with windows that overlook the formal gardens. The Gothic architecture of the building rises into the darkness like something from a fairy tale, its ivy-covered walls and pointed dormers creating dramatic shadows in the moonlight. Security lights cast pools of amber illumination along the walkways, but Romeo has learned to navigate the darker spaces between, his dark clothing helping him blend into the night. His breath forms small clouds in the cold air as he checks his phone. 11:47 p.m. Their agreed-upon time. He looks up to see Juliet's window crack open, a rectangle of warm light spilling into the darkness. She appears silhouetted against her room's glow, leaning carefully out to avoid detection by the house monitors who patrol the halls at regular intervals. You came, she whispers, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. I couldn't stay away, Romeo replies softly, tilting his face up toward her window. Though I'm pretty sure this violates about 12 different school regulations. Juliet's laugh ripples down like silver water. Probably 15. I counted them while I was supposed to be studying for my European history exam. She's changed from her uniform into soft pajamas, pink flannel with tiny flowers that make her look younger and more vulnerable than her usual composed classroom persona. Her hair falls loose around her shoulders, catching the light from her room in golden waves. Even 3 stories up, Romeo can see the brightness of her eyes, the way her smile transforms her entire face. How was dinner with your parents? Romeo asks, remembering she'd mentioned their monthly visit to Westfield's finest restaurant. Exactly what you'd expect. Juliet sighs, her expression growing more serious. Father spent 40 minutes discussing my college applications like they were military campaigns. Mother critiqued my posture, my conversation skills, and my choice of dessert. And both of them asked pointed questions about why my grades in literature have improved so dramatically. Romeo feels a flush of pleasure despite the circumstances. Because you're brilliant and finally have someone who appreciates discussing symbolism and Renaissance poetry. Because I have someone who makes me want to understand every beautiful thing ever written. Juliet corrects gently. You make me see literature differently, Romeo. Like it's not just about analyzing techniques or impressing teachers, it's about discovering truths about being human. The confession hangs in the air between them, more intimate than any physical touch they haven't yet shared. Romeo's heart hammers against his ribs as he processes the implication that his influence on her thinking mirrors her effect on his entire worldview. Your cousin cornered me again today, Romeo mentions reluctantly. Outside the dining hall, he suggested I might be happier at a different school, preferably one on a different continent. Juliet's expression darkens. Tybalt has no right to threaten you. I'll talk to him. No, Romeo says quickly. That'll only make things worse. He already suspects something. And if he thinks you're defending me, I don't care what he thinks. Juliet's voice carries surprising steel. I'm tired of living my entire life according to other people's expectations and prejudices. My parents, Tybalt, even well-meaning friends like Maria. Everyone wants to control my choices based on family loyalty and social position. But those things matter here, Romeo points out, though saying it feels like swallowing glass. Westfield runs on tradition and family connections. Going against that system has consequences. For who? Juliet leans further out her window, her voice growing passionate. For my parents' political ambitions? For Tybalt's social status? What about consequences for me if I spend my whole life avoiding anything real or meaningful because it might create complications? A sound in the hallway behind her footsteps and the soft murmur of voices makes them both freeze. Juliet quickly pulls back from the window, leaving only a crack of light visible. Romeo presses himself against the oak's massive trunk, becoming one with the shadows as a security guard makes his routine patrol around the building's perimeter. The guard's flashlight beam sweeps across the gardens in lazy arcs, pausing occasionally to illuminate a suspicious shadow or unexpected shape. Romeo holds his breath until the footsteps fade, and the guard moves toward the adjacent building. After several minutes, Juliet reappears at her window. That was Mr. Peterson, she whispers. He'll be back in exactly 45 minutes. He's very punctual. I should go, Romeo says reluctantly. If they catch me here. Wait, Juliet's voice stops him mid-step. Romeo, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been thinking about since that first night you called. He looks up at her expectantly, noting how the moonlight turns her hair to spun silver and makes her skin seem luminous. I think I'm falling in love with you, she says simply, her words carrying such honest vulnerability that Romeo feels his knees go weak. I know it's complicated and probably impossible and definitely not what either of our families would want, but I needed you to know. I've never felt anything like this before. This certainty that someone understands the parts of me I didn't even know existed. Romeo stares up at her, momentarily speechless. When he finds his voice, it comes out hoarse with emotion. Juliet, I've been in love with you since that night at your house, when you talked about Shakespeare's sonnets like they were personal letters. Maybe even before that in ways I didn't recognize. So what do we do now? She asks, and her question contains multitudes practical considerations about family rivalry, academic pressures, social expectations, and the simple logistical challenges of conducting a secret relationship in an environment designed to prevent exactly this kind of complication. I don't know, Romeo admits. But I know I can't go back to pretending you're just another classmate, or that what I feel for you is just teenage infatuation. Neither can I, Juliet agrees. So maybe we figure it out together one day at a time. November arrives at Westfield Academy with the stark beauty of approaching winter. Bare branches creating intricate patterns against gray skies that promise snow. The campus takes on a different character in these shorter days, more intimate, more secretive, as if the early darkness provides cover for all kinds of hidden activities. For Romeo and Juliet, these weeks become a masterclass in covert operations, their love affair conducted through careful choreography of stolen moments and encrypted communications. They develop an elaborate system of codes and signals. A red ribbon in Juliet's hair means she can meet after evening study hall. Romeo, wearing his blue tie instead of the burgundy one, signals he's found a window of freedom between lacrosse practice and dinner. They communicate through highlighted passages in library books, leaving them on predetermined shelves where the other will discover literary love letters disguised as academic research. Their first real kiss happens 3 weeks after that midnight conversation beneath her dormitory window. It's during the chaos of the annual fall drama production, Westfield's prestigious theater program mounting an ambitious production of Much Ado About Nothing. Romeo volunteers for the lighting crew, while Juliet helps with costume design, both drawn by the opportunity to spend evening hours in the same building without suspicion. The kiss occurs in a storage room behind the auditorium stage, surrounded by dusty flats depicting gardens and ballrooms from productions past. Juliet has been pinning alterations on Beatrice's elaborate Renaissance gown when Romeo appears in the doorway, his hair tousled from wrestling with stage rigging, and his eyes bright with the excitement of successfully installing a particularly complex spotlight array. "How's the costume coming?" he asks, though his attention focuses entirely on her face rather than the elaborate dress draped over her sewing table. "Almost finished," Juliet replies, setting down her pins with hands that tremble slightly. Being alone with him in enclosed spaces has become increasingly charged, the air between them crackling with unspoken desires and carefully restrained impulses. Romeo steps closer, ostensibly to examine her needlework, but actually drawn by the magnetic pull that seems to intensify whenever they're within arm's reach. "You're incredibly talented," he says softly. "The detail work on this embroidery is museum quality." "My mother insisted on private lessons," Juliet explains, though her voice sounds breathless. She believes accomplished young women should master traditional feminine arts, along with academic subjects. "Lucky for the drama department," Romeo says, now close enough that she can smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that his mother probably selected. "And lucky for me, getting to watch an artist at work." When Juliet looks up from the gown, their faces are inches apart. The storage room suddenly feels impossibly small, filled with the sound of their synchronized breathing and the distant murmur of rehearsal activity in the main theater. Romeo's hand rises to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the delicate line of her cheekbone. "We shouldn't," Juliet whispers, though she makes no move to step away. "Probably not," Romeo agrees, his voice equally soft. "But I can't seem to care about shouldn't anymore." Their lips meet with surprising gentleness, a tentative exploration that quickly deepens into something more urgent and necessary. Juliet's hands find their way to the collar of his shirt, while Romeo's arms encircle her waist, pulling her closer until no space remains between them. The kiss tastes like possibility and rebellion, like every romantic poem ever written condensed into a single moment of perfect understanding. When they finally break apart, both breathless, Juliet rests her forehead against Romeo's chest. "This is crazy," she murmurs against the soft cotton of his shirt. "Completely insane," Romeo agrees, his chin resting on top of her head. "And I don't want to stop." Their secret relationship transforms the mundane routines of preparatory school life into adventures filled with hidden meaning. Shared glances during morning assembly become electric communications. Accidentally brushing hands while reaching for the same library book sends shockwaves through both their nervous systems. Even their academic performance improves. Romeo's essays in literature class take on new depth and passion, while Juliet's participation in class discussions becomes more confident and insightful. But maintaining secrecy in Westfield's fishbowl environment requires constant vigilance and increasingly creative solutions. They begin leaving notes in each other's lockers, timing the exchanges during the brief windows when hallway traffic is minimal. Romeo develops a sudden interest in student government, attending meetings where Juliet serves as sophomore class representative. They volunteer for community service projects that require off-campus trips, treasuring car rides where they can hold hands and speak freely without fear of observation. The strain of concealment takes its toll in unexpected ways. Juliet finds herself snapping at Maria when her best friend makes innocent comments about Romeo's family. Romeo becomes irritable with Benvolio's well-meaning advice about dating more appropriate girls. Both struggle to maintain normal relationships with friends and family members who have no idea their entire emotional landscape has shifted. The pressure intensifies when Tybalt begins actively investigating Romeo's activities, enlisting his lacrosse teammates to monitor Montague movements around campus. He corners Maria after French class, employing charm and subtle intimidation to extract information about Juliet's recent behavior changes. "She seems different lately," Tybalt observes with calculated casualness. "More secretive." spending more time alone instead of hanging out with her usual group. Maria, loyal but not particularly skilled at deception, shifts uncomfortably under his scrutiny. She's been focused on her studies. She offers weakly. You know how she gets when she's working on important projects. Right. Tybalt's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Studies. That must explain why she's been taking evening walks around campus instead of staying in her room with her textbooks. The conversation leaves Maria disturbed enough to warn Juliet, who realizes their carefully constructed facade is beginning to crack under scrutiny. That evening, during another whispered phone conversation, she shares her growing concerns with Romeo. "He's watching me," she says, pacing her small dormitory room while her roommate studies with headphones on. "And probably watching you too. We need to be more careful. Or we need to stop sneaking around entirely," Romeo suggests, his voice carrying equal measures of frustration and determination. "Maybe it's time to be honest about how we feel." "And what? Tell our families we've fallen in love across enemy lines? Announce to the entire school that we're together despite everything we've been taught about loyalty and tradition? Why not?" Romeo asks. And the simple question contains a world of revolutionary possibility. December descends upon Westfield Academy like a velvet curtain, heavy with the promise of Christmas break and the weight of accumulated secrets. The campus wears winter's first snow like ermine robes, transforming familiar pathways into something mysterious and pristine. But beneath the postcard beauty, tensions simmer with the dangerous heat of family honor and adolescent passion colliding in increasingly volatile ways. The breaking point comes during the annual winter formal committee meeting, held in the mahogany-paneled conference room, where portraits of distinguished alumni gaze down with expressions of perpetual disappointment. The committee, composed of senior class officers and selected underclassmen, meets every Tuesday afternoon to plan Westfield's most prestigious social event, a December gala that serves as both celebration and careful choreography of the school's social hierarchy. Romeo sits at the oval table's far end, ostensibly taking notes about catering options while actually composing a poem about snowflakes caught in Juliet's hair. His notebook fills with verses instead of vendor contact information, his handwriting growing increasingly illegible as his thoughts drift to stolen moments in the library stacks where he and Juliet have perfected the art of whispering entire conversations between the dusty shelves of medieval literature. Juliet occupies a chair near the committee head, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon that makes her look older and more sophisticated than her 14 years warrant. She contributes thoughtfully to discussions about decorating themes and musical selections, her suggestions revealing an aesthetic sensibility that impresses even the most cynical seniors. When she proposes incorporating winter garden elements, white roses and silver branches creating an indoor forest, Romeo feels his chest tighten with pride and affection. "Excellent suggestion, Miss Capulet." The committee chairwoman, a formidable senior named Victoria Ashworth, makes a note on her leather portfolio. "The winter garden theme perfectly complements our chosen venue in the conservatory." The meeting proceeds smoothly until Tybalt Capulet arrives 15 minutes late, his entrance calculated to draw maximum attention. His lacrosse jacket bears the captain's insignia he earned through aggressive play and political maneuvering, and his dark hair gleams with expensive styling products that catch the conference room's crystal chandelier light. He slides into an empty chair with theatrical precision, his eyes immediately scanning the room's occupants like a predator cataloging potential threats. "Sorry I'm late," Tybalt announces without sounding remotely apologetic. "Emergency lacrosse booster meeting ran longer than expected. Something about maintaining program standards and ensuring appropriate associations." The last phrase carries pointed emphasis that makes several committee members shift uncomfortably. Romeo keeps his expression carefully neutral, but his grip tightens on his pen until his knuckles show white beneath tanned skin. Victoria Ashworth, accustomed to managing teenage egos and family politics, smoothly redirects attention back to formal planning. "We were just discussing the winter garden decorating theme Juliet proposed. Perhaps you have thoughts on entertainment options?" Tybalt's smile resembles a blade wrapped in silk. "I think entertainment should reflect Westfield's values, tradition, excellence, and appropriate social boundaries. We wouldn't want to encourage unsuitable connections during such an important event." The comment lands like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples of tension throughout the room. Several committee members exchange meaningful glances, while others suddenly find their notebooks fascinating. Juliet's cheeks flush pink, but her voice remains steady when she responds. I believe Westfield's values include openness to new ideas and treating all students with equal respect, regardless of family background, she says with quiet dignity that somehow carries more authority than Tybalt's aggressive posturing. Of course, cousin. Tybalt's tone drips false sweetness. Though some families have different definitions of respect. Some think respect means knowing your place and not overstepping traditional boundaries. Romeo's chair scrapes against the hardwood floor as he stands abruptly. Are you suggesting that some students don't belong at Westfield events? His voice carries barely controlled anger, and several committee members lean back instinctively, sensing the approaching storm. I'm suggesting. Tybalt rises to match Romeo's stance, his athletic frame coiled with aggressive energy, that some people mistake politeness for invitation and assume they're welcome where they're clearly not wanted. Gentlemen, Victoria Ashworth's voice cuts through the mounting tension with administrative authority. This is neither the time nor the place for personal disagreements. Perhaps we should adjourn early and resume next week when cooler heads prevail. But Romeo and Tybalt remain locked in their staring contest. Two young men raised on family pride and competitive advantage now facing off across a conference table that might as well be a medieval battlefield. The air practically vibrates with unspoken challenges and inherited hatred. Some people, Tybalt continues, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, think they can waltz around campus, pursuing girls who are completely out of their league, creating drama and complications that affect entire families. But consequences have a way of catching up with people who don't know their place. And some people, Romeo replies, his own voice equally quiet but trembling with suppressed fury, think they can intimidate and threaten their way through life, using family name as an excuse for bullying behavior. But eventually even the most privileged cowards have to face someone who won't back down. The insult calling Tybalt a coward in front of witnesses crosses every line of acceptable preparatory school discourse. In Westfield's carefully regulated social ecosystem, public challenges to personal honor demand equally public responses. Tybalt's face flushes dark red, his hands clenching into fists that strain against his blazer sleeves. Take that back, Tybalt snarls. All pretense of civilized behavior abandoned. Take it back right now. Or what? Romeo steps closer, his own anger finally overwhelming months of careful restraint. You'll have your daddy's lawyers write me a strongly worded letter? You'll get your lacrosse buddies to slash my tires? What exactly are you planning to do that's scarier than listening to your pathetic threats every day? Juliet stands so quickly her chair topples backward with a crash that echoes through the suddenly silent room. Stop it! Her voice carries surprising command for someone so young. Both of you, stop this immediately. But her intervention only adds fuel to the conflagration. Tybalt's attention swivels to her with laser focus, his expression shifting from anger to something far more dangerous realization mixed with calculating malice. Oh, he breathes. Pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking into place. Oh, this is even better than I thought. Little Juliet, defending her knight in shining armor. How long has this been going on, cousin? How long have you been sneaking around with Montague trash? The accusation hangs in the air like poison gas, contaminating everything it touches. Every person in the room understands the implications: forbidden relationships, family betrayal, social scandal that could destroy reputations and academic futures with equal efficiency. The conference room falls into the kind of absolute silence that precedes explosions. Every person frozen in tableau as Tybalt's accusation reverberates like a gunshot in the mahogany-paneled space. The portraits of distinguished alumni seem to lean forward from their frames, as if even the dead are eager to witness this scandal unfold. Victoria Ashworth's pen hovers motionless over her leather portfolio, while other committee members exchange glances that range from shocked to gleefully scandalized. Juliet stands perfectly still, her face drained of color, except for 2 spots of high pink on her cheekbones. Her green eyes flash with a combination of fury and something that looks dangerously like desperation, as she realizes her carefully constructed world is crumbling in real time. When she speaks, her voice carries the crystalline clarity that comes from absolute conviction mixed with absolute terror. "How dare you?" she says to Tybalt, each word precisely enunciated. "How dare you make accusations based on nothing but your own paranoid suspicions and wounded ego? Romeo and I are barely acquainted beyond sharing literature class, and your attempt to create scandal from innocent interactions is beneath even your usual standards of behavior. Her denial sounds almost convincing, delivered with the practiced poise of someone raised to navigate social minefields. But Romeo, watching her face closely, can see the slight tremor in her hands, the way her breathing has become carefully controlled. He realizes she's trying to protect both of them by sacrificing the truth of what they've shared. Innocent interactions, Tybalt repeats with savage amusement. Is that what you call sneaking around campus after hours? Meeting in empty classrooms? I have witnesses, cousin. Your little romance isn't as secret as you think. Romeo's protective instincts override every consideration of diplomacy or self-preservation. Leave her alone, Capulet, he growls, moving closer to where Juliet stands like a deer caught in headlights. If you have a problem with someone's behavior, take it up with me directly instead of attacking a girl who's done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong? Tybalt's laugh sounds like breaking glass. She's betrayed everything our family stands for, throwing herself at the first Montague who shows her attention. But then again, maybe she's just following your family's pattern of taking what doesn't belong to them. The insult to his family heritage snaps Romeo's remaining self-control like an overstretched rubber band. 20 years of inherited grievances, months of swallowed pride, and weeks of accumulated frustration at hiding his feelings, all converge into a moment of pure, crystalline rage. That's enough, Romeo snarls, closing the distance between them until they stand chest to chest. Apologize to Juliet right now, or I'll make you apologize. Tybalt's eyes light up with predatory satisfaction. This is exactly what he wanted. Romeo pushed past the point of rational thought, ready to do something publicly stupid that will justify whatever retaliation the Capulet family chooses to unleash. Make me? Tybalt's voice drops to a whisper that somehow carries to every corner of the room. You pathetic wannabe intellectual, you wouldn't last 30 seconds in a real fight. You're all poetry and feelings, just like every other Montague all talk. No substance. Romeo's fist connects with Tybalt's jaw before anyone can react. A solid right cross that sends the lacrosse captain staggering backward into a display case filled with academic trophies. The crash of breaking glass punctuates Victoria Ashworth's scream and the scrape of chairs as committee members scramble away from the violence erupting in their midst. Tybalt recovers quickly, his athletic training evident in the fluid way he regains his balance and launches himself at Romeo with calculated precision. His tackle sends both young men crashing into the conference table, scattering papers and committee portfolios across the polished floor. They grapple with the desperate intensity of soldiers fighting for survival, each landing punches that will leave bruises for weeks. Stop! Juliet's voice cuts through the sounds of combat, but neither combatant seems to hear her. Romeo has Tybalt pinned against the table, their faces inches apart as they strain against each other's grip. Tybalt breaks free with a wrestler's hip throw that sends Romeo sliding across the hardwood floor into the wall. Security! Victoria Ashworth shouts into the hallway, her voice cracking with panic. Someone call security immediately! Tybalt advances on Romeo with methodical purpose, his normally perfect hair disheveled and his blazer torn at the shoulder. Blood trickles from a cut above his left eyebrow, but his smile suggests he's enjoying the violence more than any civilized person should. This is what happens. Tybalt pants between labored breaths. When people forget their place, when they think they can cross lines that exist for good reasons. Romeo struggles to his feet, his lips split and his shirt half torn from its buttons. Despite the physical damage, his eyes burn with undiminished defiance. The only thing I've learned, he gasps, is that some people will use any excuse to justify being cruel bullies. Cruel? Tybalt's laugh sounds genuinely delighted. You haven't seen Cruel yet, Montague. Wait until your parents find out about your little obsession with my cousin. Wait until the administration reviews your disciplinary record. Wait until you realize what it costs to cross my family. The threats land like physical blows, each one carrying implications that extend far beyond this moment. Romeo realizes he's not just fighting for his dignity or even for Juliet's honor. He's fighting for their future, for the possibility of any happiness beyond the toxic legacy their families have created. Heavy footsteps echo in the hallway as campus security approaches, their presence signaling the end of this confrontation but the beginning of consequences that will reshape everything. Juliet stands pressed against the wall, tears streaming down her face, as she watches the two most important relationships in her life destroy each other with violence that serves no purpose except perpetuating ancient hatreds. "Please," she whispers, though whether she's addressing Romeo, Tybalt, or some higher power remains unclear. "Please, just stop." But stopping is no longer an option. The damage has been done. Words have been spoken that can't be unsaid. And lines have been crossed that will require reckoning. As security guards burst through the conference room doors, both Romeo and Tybalt stand bloodied but unrepentant, each convinced that honor demanded this violence.
A disciplinary hearing convenes in Headmaster Patterson's office at 8 o'clock the following morning. The December sun casting long shadows across Persian rugs and oil paintings that have witnessed decades of academic misconduct. The mahogany-paneled room feels more like a courtroom than an educational space, with its imposing desk, leather-bound law books, and formal portraits of previous headmasters whose stern expressions suggest they would have handled such matters with swift, unforgiving justice. Both families arrive in force, their expensive cars creating a traffic jam in the visitor parking lot that becomes symbolic of the larger disruption this scandal has created in Westfield's carefully ordered universe. Senator Richard Capulet strides through the administration, buildings marble hallways like a man preparing for political battle, his navy suit impeccable despite the early hour, his silver hair perfectly styled, and his jaw set with the determination of someone accustomed to winning through sheer force of will and checkbook diplomacy. William Montague enters with equal gravitas, but different energy, more calculating, his every gesture suggesting intellectual superiority and old money confidence that views this entire situation as beneath his family's dignity. His wife Eleanor follows with the composed elegance of someone who has navigated social scandals before, her designer handbag clutched like a shield against the storm of family embarrassment. Headmaster Patterson, a distinguished man in his 60s, whose Oxford accent and scholarly reputation usually intimidate even the most privileged parents, finds himself mediating between two titans of American influence. His desk displays the evidence of yesterday's confrontation, witness statements from committee members, photographs of the damaged conference room, and medical reports documenting the injuries both young men sustained. This is unprecedented in Westfield's 130-year history. Patterson begins, his voice carrying the weight of institutional disappointment. Physical violence on campus violates our most fundamental principles and threatens the reputation we've spent generations building. Romeo sits in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, his split lip and bruised cheek making him look like a warrior poet from some romantic tragedy. He wears his best suit navy blue, with a subtle pinstripe that his mother selected for college interviews, but the formal clothing cannot disguise the fundamental change in his bearing. The fight has stripped away his careful polish, revealing something raw and more dangerous beneath the prep school veneer. Beside him, his father maintains rigid composure despite the rage burning in his dark eyes. "My son has never displayed violent tendencies," William states with careful precision. This incident represents a significant departure from his normal behavior, which suggests extraordinary provocation. Senator Capulet's laugh sounds like a political attack ad made audible. "Extraordinary provocation. Your son attacked my nephew without warning during an official school function. This is exactly the kind of unstable behavior I'd expect from a family that never learned proper boundaries." Proper boundaries. William's voice drops to a dangerous whisper. "Perhaps you should discuss boundaries with your nephew, who has spent weeks harassing and threatening my son based on paranoid delusions about teenage social interactions." Tybalt sits across the room with his parents. His own injuries, a spectacular black eye and 3 stitches above his eyebrows played like medals of honor. His mother, Patricia Capulet, hovers protectively despite her son's size advantage over everyone else in the room. Her blonde hair mirrors Juliet's shade exactly, but where her daughter radiates gentle intelligence, Patricia embodies aggressive social climbing wrapped in designer clothing and righteous maternal fury. Paranoid delusions. Patricia's voice rises to a pitch that makes the crystal paperweights on Patterson's desk vibrate sympathetically. "My nephew was protecting family honor from a boy who has been stalking my daughter, creating an inappropriate relationship that threatens her reputation and academic future. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke from a a house fire, contaminating everything it touches. Romeo's hands clench into fists before he forces them to relax. While his mother's sharp intake of breath suggests she is hearing these specific charges for the first time, Headmaster Patterson consults his notes with the careful attention of a judge reviewing legal precedents. Multiple witnesses confirm that both young men contributed to the escalation of yesterday's confrontation. However, the first physical blow was struck by Romeo Montague, which technically makes him the aggressor under school disciplinary codes. He was defending himself against weeks of harassment. Eleanor Montague speaks for the first time, her cultured voice carrying steel beneath its polished surface. If the administration had properly addressed Tybalt Capulet's threatening behavior earlier, this incident could have been prevented entirely. My nephew never threatened anyone, Senator Capulet interjects. He simply made observations about inappropriate behavior patterns that any concerned family member would notice and address. The argument continues in circles, each family presenting their version of events while carefully avoiding the central truth that everyone in the room understands but no one wants to acknowledge directly. Romeo and Juliet have fallen in love across family lines, and that forbidden relationship has now exploded into public scandal that threatens both their futures and their families. Carefully maintained social positions. Finally, Headmaster Patterson raises his hand for silence. Regardless of provocation or prior harassment, physical violence cannot be tolerated at Westfield Academy. Both students will face suspension pending further investigation. Suspension. William Montague leans forward like a predator, scenting weakness. You re-punishing both boys equally, despite the fact that my son was clearly responding to systematic intimidation. I'm applying consistent disciplinary standards, Patterson replies firmly. However, given the families involved and the potential for continued conflict, I'm recommending that Romeo Montague complete his senior year at another institution. Several excellent preparatory schools have expressed willingness to accept him for the spring semester. The announcement lands like a bomb, detonated in the center of the room. Romeo feels the blood drain from his face as he realizes he is being separated from Juliet, not just temporarily, but potentially permanently. His mother gasps audibly, while his father's expression shifts from anger to calculation as he processes the implications for his son's college applications and social standing. You're expelling him. Eleanor's voice cracks with maternal anguish, destroying his academic record and his college prospects because he defended himself against harassment. I'm providing a solution that protects all parties involved, Patterson corrects. Romeo will receive full credit for his coursework and appropriate recommendations for college applications, but continued enrollment here poses risks to campus harmony that I cannot ignore. Romeo finally finds his voice, though it emerges hoarse and desperate. What about Juliet? What happens to her in all of this family politics and administrative maneuvering? The question creates a moment of absolute silence, as if he's mentioned something obscene in polite company. Senator Capulet's face darkens to a dangerous shade of purple, while Tybalt smirks with savage satisfaction at seeing his enemy's pain made manifest. Miss Capulet, Headmaster Patterson says carefully, will continue her education here without disruption, provided all parties commit to avoiding future conflicts that might compromise the learning environment. You mean, provided she never speaks to me again, Romeo translates bitterly. You're not just separating us, you're making sure we can never see each other, never communicate, never have any kind of relationship beyond being characters in our family's stupid, pointless war.
You're not just separating us, you're making sure we can never see each other, never communicate, never have any kind of relationship beyond being characters in our family's stupid, pointless war. 3 weeks pass like a slow hemorrhage, each day bleeding away another piece of the life Romeo and Juliet built together in stolen moments and whispered secrets. The Christmas break that should have provided respite becomes instead a cruel mockery, with Romeo packing his belongings for transfer to Camden Preparatory Academy in Massachusetts, while Juliet remains imprisoned in her family's Connecticut estate, monitored like a potential flight risk who might bolt at any moment. The Capulet mansion transforms into a fortress of surveillance and intervention. Patricia Capulet schedules her daughter's days with military precision, private tutoring sessions with approved instructors, supervised social activities with pre-selected friends, and family dinners, where conversation topics are carefully regulated to avoid any mention of recent unpleasantness. Juliet's phone disappears from her room, ostensibly for repairs, while her computer access becomes mysteriously limited to educational websites and college preparation resources. "Darling, this is all for your own good," Patricia explains during one of their mandatory mother-daughter tea sessions in the sunroom overlooking snow-covered gardens. She wears a cashmere sweater set in pale pink that coordinates perfectly with the room's floral wallpaper, her makeup applied with the precision of someone preparing for a television interview. "You're too young to understand how easily a girl's reputation can be damaged by association with unsuitable young men." Juliet sits across from her mother like a prisoner receiving sentence, her posture perfect despite the rebellion burning in her green eyes. She's lost weight since the disciplinary hearing, her uniform hanging slightly loose on her frame, and dark circles under her eyes suggest sleep has become elusive. "Mother, Romeo isn't unsuitable. He's intelligent, kind, and he treats me with respect. His only crime is carrying a family name you don't like. His family name represents everything wrong with old money arrogance." Patricia's voice sharpens like a blade being honed. "The Montagues think they're better than everyone else because their ancestors made fortunes, robbing Native Americans and exploiting immigrant labor. They've never worked for anything real, never contributed anything meaningful to society." The irony of this criticism, coming from a woman whose own family climbed from middle-class obscurity to political prominence within a single generation, is not lost on Juliet. But pointing out hypocrisy would only escalate the confrontation, and she's learning to choose her battles carefully. "What happened between our families in the past has nothing to do with Romeo and me," Juliet argues quietly. "We didn't choose our family names, and we shouldn't be punished for conflicts we didn't create." Patricia's expression softens slightly, maternal concern breaking through political calculation. "Sweetheart, you're 14 years old. You think what you feel for this boy is love, but it's just infatuation amplified by the drama of forbidden romance. In 2 years, you'll be grateful we protected you from making a mistake that could have followed you for the rest of your life." But Juliet knows with crystalline certainty that what she feels for Romeo transcends teenage infatuation or rebellious attraction to the forbidden. Their connection runs deeper than family loyalty or social expectations. It's the recognition of two souls perfectly matched despite every external factor that should keep them apart. Meanwhile, Romeo exists in his own version of purgatory at Camden Preparatory, where the other students treat him like a curiosity, the violent transfer student from Westfield whose family scandal has become gossip currency throughout New England's preparatory school network. His new dormitory room feels like a monk's cell, sparsely furnished and overlooking a courtyard where snow accumulates in perfect geometric patterns that remind him painfully of the formal gardens where he and Juliet shared their first real conversation. His roommate, a quiet boy named David who aspires to MIT and speaks primarily in mathematical equations, tries to be friendly but clearly finds Romeo's brooding presence unsettling. "You know," David ventures one evening while they both pretend to study, "Camden has some really interesting clubs. The debate team is nationally ranked, and the literary magazine just won a regional award." "Thanks," Romeo replies without looking up from his calculus homework, though the equations blur together into meaningless symbols. Everything at Camden feels hollow and temporary, like he's marking time until he can figure out how to return to the only place that matters. He writes Juliet letters he can't send, filling notebook after notebook with observations about his new environment, memories of their time together, and desperate plans for reunion that grow more unrealistic with each passing day. His literature teacher, Mrs. Chen, notices the change in his writing style, more passionate, more urgent, tinged with genuine anguish that transforms even routine assignments into emotional landscapes. "Mr. Montague," she says after class one afternoon, "your essay on Shakespearean tragedy showed remarkable insight. You wrote about love as a force that reveals both the best and worst in human nature. That's quite sophisticated thinking for someone your age." "Maybe I've had some recent experience with how love complicates everything," Romeo replies, his attempt at humor falling flat in the face of his obvious pain. Mrs. Chen, a woman in her 40s who has taught enough teenagers to recognize genuine heartbreak, offers gentle guidance. "Sometimes, the most powerful emotions make us feel like we're living in our own tragic drama. But remember, Shakespeare's young lovers made choices based on desperation rather than wisdom. Real love finds ways to survive and grow, even when circumstances seem impossible." Her words provide little comfort because Romeo increasingly believes their circumstances are impossible. The geographic separation is only the beginning. Both families have made clear that any attempt at continued contact will result in even harsher consequences. His parents speak about moving forward and learning from mistakes, while Benvolio's carefully neutral letters from Westfield contain enough subtext to confirm that Juliet remains under constant surveillance. The breaking point arrives 3 days before Christmas, when Romeo receives an unexpected phone call from Maria, Juliet's best friend. Her voice trembles with urgency and fear as she explains the situation that has driven her to risk contacting him. "Romeo, you have to know what's happening here," Maria whispers, clearly calling from somewhere she won't be overheard. Juliet's parents aren't just monitoring her, they're planning something big. "I overheard a conversation between her mother and some private school counselor from Switzerland. They're talking about sending her abroad for the rest of high school." Romeo feels his world tilt sideways as the implications sink in. Switzerland isn't just geographic separation, it's complete elimination of any possibility for contact or reunion. "When?" he asks, his voice barely audible. "Right after New Year's. They've already submitted the application and paid the enrollment fees." Romeo: "She doesn't know yet. They're planning to tell her on Christmas Day, present it as a wonderful opportunity for international experience." "How is she?" Romeo asks, though he's not sure he wants to hear the answer. "Terrible," Maria admits. "She barely eats, barely speaks, spends most of her time staring out windows like she's waiting for something that's never going to come. Her parents think she's adjusting, but I think she's just and disappearing inside herself." The revelation about Switzerland hits Romeo like a physical blow, leaving him staring at his dormitory phone long after Maria ends the call in panicked haste. Outside his window, Camden's campus stretches under December snow that sparkles like crushed diamonds in the afternoon sun. But the beauty feels mocking now, a perfect winter scene that emphasizes how cold and empty his world has become without Juliet's presence. Switzerland represents more than geographical separation, it's complete amputation. Swiss boarding schools cater to the children of diplomats and international business moguls, offering academic excellence wrapped in social isolation from American teenage culture. Students there communicate with home through carefully monitored channels, and their social circles consist entirely of other displaced elite children whose families value discretion above all else. Romeo paces his small room like a caged animal, his mind racing through increasingly desperate scenarios. He considers driving to Connecticut immediately, showing up at the Capulet estate and demanding to speak with Juliet. He fantasizes about enlisting his parents' help, convincing them to intervene diplomatically with the Capulets. He even contemplates more dramatic gestures, public declarations of love that would force both families to acknowledge the depth of their feelings. But reality intrudes with crushing practicality. The Capulet estate has security gates and surveillance cameras that would detect his approach long before he reached the front door. His parents view the entire situation as a cautionary tale about the dangers of inappropriate relationships, not a romance worthy of rescue, and public gestures would only provide ammunition for those who already consider him unstable and potentially dangerous. His phone rings again at 11 that night, jolting him from fitful attempts at sleep. The caller ID shows a Connecticut area code he doesn't recognize, and for a moment hope flares that somehow Juliet has found a way to contact him directly. "Romeo?" The voice belongs to Friar Lawrence, not actually a religious figure but Dr. Lawrence Martin, Westfield's philosophy professor who earned the nickname through his habit of offering counsel to troubled students. His academic specialty in ethics and moral philosophy, combined with his genuine compassion for teenage struggles, has made him an unofficial confessor for several generations of Westfield students. "Dr. Martin, how did you get this number?" Romeo asks, his voice hoarse from hours of internal anguish. "Your cousin Benvolio provided it. He's quite concerned about you, and frankly, so am I." "Doctor." Martin's voice carries the warm authority that has made him beloved by students who typically dismiss adult advice as irrelevant interference. "I understand you've learned about the Capulet family's plans for Juliet. You know about Switzerland." Romeo feels a surge of hope mixed with desperation. If Dr. Martin is calling, perhaps he has solutions or at least strategies for managing this impossible situation. I know that two remarkable young people have found themselves trapped in a conflict they didn't create, facing consequences far more severe than their actions warrant. Dr. Martin pauses, choosing his words carefully. I also know that desperate situations sometimes drive people toward dramatic solutions that create more problems than they solve. The warning is clear, though gently delivered. Romeo sinks into his desk chair, suddenly feeling every hour of lost sleep and every moment of accumulated stress. What am I supposed to do? Just accept that the girl I love is being shipped off to another continent because our parents can't get over some stupid rivalry from before we were born? I'm supposed to tell you that love at 17 feels overwhelming, but that time heals all wounds and that you'll meet other girls who will make you forget this pain, Doctor, Martin says with characteristic honesty. But I've seen how you and Juliet look at each other, and I don't think this is typical teenage infatuation. It's not, Romeo confirms, his voice breaking slightly. She's everything I didn't know I was looking for. She makes me want to be better than I am. She sees things in me that I didn't know existed. And how does she feel about you? The same way, I think. At least, she did before all this family drama exploded. Romeo realizes he's crying, tears he didn't know had been building flowing freely in the darkness of his dormitory room. But what does it matter how we feel if we can't even communicate? Much less see each other? Dr. Martin remains silent for several moments, the kind of thoughtful pause that suggests he's weighing multiple factors before responding. Romeo, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You're 18 years old, which means you're legally an adult with the right to make your own choices about relationships and communication. Juliet, however, is 14 and considered a minor under her parents' legal authority. I know that, Romeo says impatiently. I know all the practical reasons why this is impossible. I'm not finished. Dr. Martin continues gently. What I'm telling you is that you have options, but they require careful planning and absolute commitment to doing things the right way. Impulsive gestures will only make the situation worse for both of you. Hope rekindles in Romeo's chest, fragile but persistent. What kind of options? Legal options. Ethical options. Options that treat both families with respect while asserting your right to pursue happiness on your own terms. Dr. Martin's voice carries conviction that suggests he's already thought through various scenarios. But first, I need to know, are you prepared to accept adult responsibilities and consequences? Because what I'm suggesting isn't a teenage rebellion. It's a commitment that will affect the rest of your life. Romeo doesn't hesitate. Yes. Whatever it takes. Then we need to talk in person. Can you drive to Hartford tomorrow afternoon? There's someone I want you to meet, a colleague who specializes in family law and has experience with situations involving minors and parental opposition to relationships. The conversation that follows lasts another 20 minutes, covering practical details and potential complications that make Romeo's head spin with their complexity. But for the first time since the disciplinary hearing, he feels something other than helpless desperation. Dr. Martin is offering hope wrapped in adult responsibility, a chance to fight for Juliet using intelligence and determination rather than dramatic gestures doomed to failure. After hanging up, Romeo sits in his dark room and stares out at the snow-covered campus that has become his temporary prison. Tomorrow, he'll drive to Hartford and begin exploring options he never knew existed. He'll discover whether love is strong enough to overcome family opposition, social pressure, and the practical challenges of building a life with someone whose parents consider him the enemy. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, Romeo Montague falls asleep planning for a future instead of mourning a lost past. The law office in Hartford feels more like a professor's study than the sterile corporate environments. Romeo expected bookshelves, lined with leather-bound legal texts, intermingle with philosophy volumes, while Persian rugs soften hardwood floors, and framed degrees from Harvard and Yale hang between watercolor landscapes. Margaret Sinclair, Dr. Martin's colleague, possesses the kind of understated authority that comes from 3 decades of navigating family law cases that involve New England's most powerful dynasties. Your situation is complex but not impossible, she explains, her silver hair pulled back in a style that suggests efficiency without severity. Connecticut law recognizes that mature minors, particularly those demonstrating academic excellence and emotional stability, have certain rights regarding personal relationships, especially when they approach the age of consent. Romeo sits in a wingback chair that makes him feel simultaneously important and overwhelmed. Dr. Martin occupies the adjacent seat, his presence providing moral support while Mrs. Sinclair outlines legal strategies that sound like military campaigns requiring precise timing and flawless execution. However, Mrs. Sinclair continues, her tone carrying necessary warnings, pursuing legal intervention requires absolute certainty about your commitment and Juliet's consent. We cannot proceed with any action that might be construed as harassment or stalking, given the recent disciplinary issues. I understand, Romeo nods, though his heart pounds with the magnitude of what she's suggesting. But what exactly could we do? Her parents are sending her to Switzerland in less than 2 weeks. Mrs. Sinclair consults her notes with practiced efficiency. Several options exist, ranging from requesting a court-appointed guardian ad litem, who could evaluate whether the Swiss boarding school serves Juliet's best interests, to filing for emancipation, if she demonstrates sufficient maturity and financial independence. Emancipation? Romeo's voice cracks slightly on the word. It's rare but not unprecedented, Doctor. Martin interjects gently, particularly for academically gifted minors whose parents' decisions seem motivated more by family politics than by the child's welfare. But Romeo, this path requires Juliet's complete cooperation and understanding of the consequences. Meanwhile, 60 miles away in the Capulet mansion, those very consequences unfold with devastating precision. Juliet discovers her parents' Swiss plan not through gentle Christmas morning revelation, but through overhearing a heated phone conversation between her mother and the International Academy of Geneva's admissions director. Yes, we understand the mid-year enrollment presents challenges. Patricia Capulet's voice carries clearly through the closed office door, where Juliet has paused on her way to the library. But our daughter needs immediate placement in a structured environment away from inappropriate influences that have already caused significant family disruption. Juliet presses herself against the wall, her heart hammering as the conversation continues with administrative efficiency that reduces her entire future to enrollment deadlines and wire transfer confirmations. The Christmas break provides perfect timing for transition. Patricia continues. She'll finish her current semester remotely and begin fresh coursework in January. Complete geographical separation is essential for breaking unhealthy attachment patterns that developed during her time at Westfield. The clinical language, inappropriate influences, unhealthy attachment patterns, strikes Juliet like physical blows. Her parents aren't just separating her from Romeo, they're pathologizing their relationship, treating love like a disease requiring radical treatment in foreign isolation. She flees to her room and locks the door, her hands shaking as she processes the implications. Switzerland isn't temporary punishment, it's permanent exile designed to ensure she never sees Romeo again. The International Academy of Geneva caters to diplomatic families and international business executives, creating a closed social system where American preparatory school scandals become irrelevant ancient history. For the first time since the disciplinary hearing, Juliet feels genuine anger burning through her carefully maintained composure. Not the helpless frustration of being misunderstood, but the clarifying rage that comes from recognizing fundamental injustice. Her parents claim to act in her best interests, while systematically destroying everything that makes her happy. That evening, she makes a decision that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. Using her computer during the brief window when parental monitoring software updates, she creates an encrypted email account and sends a message to an address she memorized from Romeo's old letters, his cousin Benvolio's personal account, that wouldn't be monitored by either family. I know you probably can't help me, she writes, her fingers flying across the keyboard with desperate efficiency. But I need you to tell Romeo that I love him, and that I'll find a way to contact him directly. My parents are sending me to Switzerland on January 3rd. If he has any plan, any idea for how we can be together, I'll do whatever it takes to make it work. I can't live the rest of my life according to their hatred. She deletes the message from her sent folder and clears her browser history, then sits staring at her reflection in the dark window. The girl looking back appears older somehow, her green eyes carrying determination that wasn't there before Christmas break began. 2 hours later, Benvolio forwards Juliet's message to Romeo with a single line of commentary. She's ready to fight, are you? Romeo reads her words 3 times before the full implications sink in. Juliet isn't just enduring this separation, she's actively planning resistance. Her offer to do whatever it takes carries weight that transforms Mrs. Sinclair's legal strategies from theoretical possibilities into actionable plans. He immediately calls Dr. Martin, despite the late hour. She wants to fight, he reports without preamble. Juliet is willing to consider legal options if it means we can be together. Slow down, doctor. Martin's voice carries both excitement and caution. This changes everything, but it also increases the stakes exponentially. If we proceed with legal intervention and fail, both of your futures could be permanently damaged. And if we don't proceed, her future is definitely damaged. Romeo replies with newfound conviction. Dr. Martin, I love her enough to spend the rest of my life proving that this isn't teenage infatuation. But I need to know she has that choice to make. The conversation that follows lasts past midnight, covering contingency plans and emergency procedures that make Romeo's head spin with their complexity. But when he finally hangs up, he feels something he hasn't experienced since the disciplinary hearing. Hope backed by concrete action. Tomorrow, he'll drive back to Connecticut and begin the most important fight of his life. December 29th arrives with the kind of bitter Connecticut cold that makes breathing painful and transforms the Capulet estate into a crystalline fortress surrounded by snow-laden evergreens that bend under winter's weight. Inside the mansion, final preparations for Juliet's Swiss departure create an atmosphere of orchestrated chaos. Packed suitcases lined up in the foyer like soldiers awaiting deployment, international shipping documents scattered across Patricia Capulet's usually immaculate desk, and hushed phone conversations with Geneva administrators who promise to monitor their newest student's adjustment with particular attention. Juliet moves through these preparations like a sleepwalker, mechanically following her mother's instructions while privately counting down to what feels like her own execution. Her passport sits in her father's study safe, her flight confirmation prints in neat stacks beside carefully selected academic transcripts that paint her as a motivated student seeking international educational opportunities rather than a girl being exiled for forbidden love. The International Academy has an excellent reputation for preparing students for European universities. Her mother chatters nervously while folding cashmere sweaters into tissue paper. Princess Caroline's daughter attended there, and she's now studying international relations at the Sorbonne. You'll make connections that will benefit you for the rest of your life. But Juliet barely hears these reassurances. Her attention focused entirely on the burner phone hidden beneath her mattress, a device purchased with birthday money and carefully concealed from the surveillance network her parents have constructed around her daily existence. Through encrypted messaging apps that would make CIA operatives proud, she and Romeo have spent the past 3 days coordinating a plan that will either save their relationship or destroy both their futures. Romeo, meanwhile, exists in his own state of controlled desperation at Camden Preparatory, where he's transformed from brooding transfer student into focused strategist with adult legal counsel. Margaret Sinclair's Hartford office has become his second home, filled with filed documents, precedent research, and emergency contact lists that read like a preparation for war rather than a teenager fighting for love. The restraining order petition is ready for filing. Mrs. Sinclair explains during their final meeting before New Year's Eve. Judge Morrison has agreed to hear emergency testimony regarding potential psychological harm caused by forced relocation. But Romeo, you understand this strategy requires Juliet to appear in court and testify about her emotional state and her parents' motivations. She's ready, Romeo confirms, though his voice carries the weight of 18 years compressing into adult responsibility overnight. We've discussed everything: the media attention, the family consequences, the possibility that we might lose and make everything worse. Dr. Martin leans forward in his chair, his professorial manner giving way to genuine concern. You're both remarkably mature for your ages, but I need you to understand what you're asking Juliet to do. Testifying against her parents in open court will create a permanent rift in that family. Even if you win the legal battle, the emotional consequences will follow both of you for years. And if we do nothing, she disappears to Switzerland, and we never see each other again. Romeo replies with the stark logic that has replaced his earlier romantic idealism. At least this way we're fighting for something instead of just accepting defeat. The plan they've constructed relies on precise timing and flawless execution. On January 2nd, the day before Juliet's scheduled flight, Romeo will drive from Massachusetts to Connecticut and file emergency court documents requesting a temporary restraining order against her forced relocation. Simultaneously, Juliet will leave her family's estate and meet Romeo at the Hartford courthouse, where she'll provide sworn testimony about the psychological coercion and emotional manipulation she's experienced. The legal strategy hinges on Connecticut's recognition of mature minors' rights and recent precedents involving teenage autonomy and family decisions. Mrs. Sinclair has found 3 cases from the past decade where courts ruled that parents cannot use geographic relocation as punishment for romantic relationships deemed inappropriate but not illegal. But legal precedent provides cold comfort when Romeo considers the human cost of their rebellion. Juliet will be choosing him over her entire family, burning bridges that can never be rebuilt, and transforming herself from beloved daughter into family pariah. The weight of that sacrifice sits like a stone in his chest, making sleep impossible and turning food to ash in his mouth. On New Year's Eve, while other teenagers celebrate with parties and champagne toasts, Romeo and Juliet conduct their final planning session through encrypted video calls that feel like war room briefings between generals preparing for battle. Juliet appears on his laptop screen with dark circles under her green eyes and a tension in her posture that suggests she's operating on pure determination rather than any remaining optimism. "My father met with his attorneys today," she reports quietly, glancing toward her locked bedroom door. "I think they suspect something. He asked pointed questions about my computer usage and whether I've been in contact with anyone from Westfield." "What did you tell him?" Romeo asks, his own stress evident in the way he runs his hands through his hair repeatedly. "That I've been researching Geneva and preparing for international academics," Juliet replies. "Which is technically true. I have been researching Geneva, just not for the reasons he thinks." They review their escape plan one final time. Juliet will leave the estate at dawn on January 2nd, telling her parents she's going for a morning walk in the snow-covered gardens that surround their property. Instead, she'll meet Romeo at a predetermined location 2 miles away, where he'll be waiting with legal documents and Mrs. Sinclair's emergency contact numbers. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Romeo asks for the dozenth time, his voice carrying anguish at the magnitude of what he's asking her to sacrifice. "I'm certain that I can't live the life they're planning for me," Juliet answers with quiet conviction. "I'd rather fail trying to choose my own future than succeed at being someone I'm not." The call ends at midnight with whispered expressions of love that carry the weight of soldiers saying goodbye before battle. Both understand that in 36 hours, everything will change. Either they'll be together with legal protection from family interference, or they'll be completely destroyed by forces beyond their control. Neither sleeps that night, each lying awake in their respective locations, staring at ceilings and counting hours until they'll either win their freedom or lose everything they've ever known. January 2nd, 1994, dawns with the kind of crystalline clarity that makes everything appear sharper and more significant. The bare tree branches etched like ink drawings against the pale sky, the snow reflecting sunlight in brilliant diamonds, and the air so cold it seems to crystallize breath into visible prayers. At 5:47 a.m., Juliet Capulet stands at her bedroom window, already dressed in layers designed to conceal the fact that she's wearing her best court-appropriate outfit beneath a casual winter jacket. Her hands shake as she applies minimal makeup, trying to appear normal while internally feeling like she's preparing for her own execution or resurrection, she's not sure which. The burner phone hidden in her jacket pocket contains Romeo's final text message, sent at 5:30 a.m. "Ready. Mrs. S. waiting at courthouse. Love you forever." Downstairs, the mansion feels like a mausoleum of family expectations, with her luggage still lined up in the foyer like tombstones marking the death of her independent will. Her parents sleep peacefully in their master suite, confident that tomorrow's flight will solve their problem permanently by placing an ocean between their daughter and her inappropriate romantic choices. Juliet leaves through the kitchen door, telling the housekeeper she needs fresh air to clear her head before the big trip. The lie tastes bitter on her tongue, but it's a small deception compared to the massive betrayal she's about to commit against everything her family believes about loyalty and proper behavior. The 2-mile walk to the rendezvous point feels simultaneously eternal and instantaneous. Each step through the snow-covered estate grounds carries her further from the only life she's ever known and closer to a future that exists only in her imagination and Romeo's promises. The weight of her decision sits like lead in her chest. She's choosing love over family, independence over security, and uncertain possibility over guaranteed comfort. Romeo waits exactly where they planned, his mother's Mercedes sedan running with the heater blasting, legal documents organized in a leather portfolio on the passenger seat. When he sees Juliet approaching through the morning mist, his expression transforms from anxiety to something approaching religious awe. She looks like an angel walking through snow, her determination visible in every graceful step despite the magnitude of what she's sacrificing. "You came," he breathes as she slides into the car, though they both knew she would. "I couldn't not come," Juliet replies, her voice steady despite the tears freezing on her cheeks. "Romeo, whatever happens today, I need you to know that choosing you isn't just about love. It's about choosing to be myself instead of who everyone else wants me to be." The drive to Hartford passes in intense silence, both lost in private thoughts about the irrevocable step they're taking. The radio plays New Year's weekend music that feels surreal, upbeat pop songs, celebrating fresh starts and new possibilities, while they race toward a confrontation that will either free them or destroy everything they've ever known. The Hartford courthouse rises before them like a temple of justice, its neoclassical columns and stone steps suggesting the weight of institutional authority they're about to invoke in their personal rebellion. Mrs. Sinclair waits in the lobby, her professional composure providing reassurance that this desperate gamble might actually succeed through proper legal channels. "You both understand what happens next," she confirms as they huddle in a conference room reviewing final details. "Juliet, you'll testify under oath about your parents' motivations for the Swiss placement and your emotional state regarding forced relocation. Romeo, you'll provide supporting testimony about the relationship and your commitment to age-appropriate boundaries." Judge Morrison, a distinguished woman in her 50s, known for thoughtful consideration of family law cases, listens with careful attention as Mrs. Sinclair presents their emergency petition. The legal language transforms their love story into clinical arguments about minors' rights, parental overreach, and psychological harm caused by forced geographic separation. "This is highly unusual," Judge Morrison observes, her voice carrying judicial gravitas that makes both teenagers feel the full weight of adult legal proceedings. "You're asking the court to intervene in parental decisions regarding education and residence areas where parents traditionally have broad authority." "Your Honor," Mrs. Sinclair responds with practiced precision. "Connecticut law recognizes that mature minors have certain rights when parental decisions appear motivated more by personal vendetta than by the child's best interests. The evidence will show that Ms. Capulet's academic performance and emotional stability have actually improved during her relationship with Mr. Montague. But their carefully orchestrated legal strategy crumbles when the courtroom doors burst open at precisely 10:15 a.m., admitting Senator Richard Capulet, flanked by 3 of Hartford's most expensive attorneys. His face displays the kind of controlled rage that comes from political figures accustomed to managing crises through superior resources and influence. "Your Honor," the lead Capulet attorney announces with theatrical authority, "we represent Ms. Capulet's parents and request immediate dismissal of these proceedings on the grounds that this petition was filed without parental knowledge or consent, and that Ms. Capulet is present in this courtroom in violation of explicit parental instructions." Juliet feels the blood drain from her face as she realizes their secret plan has been exposed, probably through surveillance technology she never suspected. Her father's political connections have given him access to resources that teenage rebellion cannot overcome, no matter how carefully planned or legally justified. Furthermore, the attorney continues, producing documents with courtroom flourish, "we have evidence that Mr. W. Elocage, Montague, has engaged in stalking behavior, harassment, and now custodial interference by encouraging a minor to defy lawful parental authority." Romeo watches in horror as their salvation transforms into his destruction. The legal system they trusted to protect their love is now being weaponized against them by superior firepower in the form of political influence and unlimited legal resources. Judge Morrison reviews the competing documents with careful attention, clearly recognizing the political landmine that has exploded in her courtroom. "I'm ordering a 2-hour recess to review all submitted materials and consult with family court precedents," she announces. "All parties will remain available for further proceedings." As court officers escort them to separate waiting areas, Romeo and Juliet exchange one desperate glance across the formal courtroom. Both understand that their carefully planned rebellion has just become a public scandal that will follow them for years, regardless of the judge's final decision. The 2-hour recess stretches like a lifetime of Judgment Day, with Romeo and Juliet confined to separate witness rooms while their families wage legal warfare in the courthouse corridors. Through the reinforced glass windows, They can see clusters of attorneys huddling over documents, court clerks rushing between offices with urgent files, and their parents engaged in heated conversations that will determine their fate without their input. At 12:47 p.m., Judge Morrison reconvenes court with the weary expression of someone who has witnessed too many family tragedies disguised as legal proceedings. Her decision, delivered in measured judicial tones, destroys their carefully constructed hopes with clinical precision. While this court recognizes the sincerity of both young people's feelings, she begins, her voice carrying the weight of institutional authority. The evidence presented raises serious concerns about judgment, parental defiance, and the potential for continued conflict that could endanger Miss Capulet's emotional and academic development. Romeo feels the courtroom floor seem to shift beneath his feet, as Judge Morrison continues with devastating conclusions. The Capulet attorneys have successfully reframed their love story as evidence of Romeo's manipulative influence over a vulnerable minor, while portraying Juliet's rebellion as proof that she requires more structured supervision than American preparatory schools can provide. Therefore, Judge Morrison concludes, this court cannot interfere with parental decisions regarding Miss Capulet's educational placement, provided that the International Academy of Geneva meets appropriate academic standards and maintains proper oversight of her emotional well-being. The gavel's sharp crack sounds like a gunshot in the silent courtroom, finalizing their separation with legal permanence that no amount of teenage determination can overcome. Juliet's sob echoes off the marble walls, while Romeo stares at the judge, with the expression of someone watching his entire future disappear into bureaucratic language and family politics. Senator Capulet's victory smile suggests he views this outcome as vindication of his political methods, superior resources, and strategic thinking, defeating youthful rebellion through proper channels. He approaches Juliet with paternal authority restored, speaking in the gentle tones reserved for managing defeated opponents. "Sweetheart, this is all for your own good," he says, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "In 5 years, you'll thank us for preventing you from making decisions that would have limited your potential and damaged your reputation." But Juliet flinches away from his touch like it burns, her green eyes blazing with a fury that transforms her delicate features into something fierce and uncompromising. "I will never forgive you for this," she whispers, her voice carrying absolute conviction. "Never." The words hit Senator Capulet like physical blows, finally showing him the true cost of his victory. He has saved his daughter from inappropriate romance by permanently destroying their relationship, winning the battle while losing something infinitely more valuable. Romeo finds himself escorted from the courthouse by campus security, his parents flanking him like prison guards as they navigate through reporters who have somehow learned about the proceedings. The local news crews treat their story like entertainment, star-crossed prep school lovers separated by family feud, reducing their tragedy to headline fodder for evening broadcasts. The drive back to Camden Preparatory passes in funeral silence, Romeo staring out the window at Connecticut landscape that now feels like a foreign country he can never revisit. His mother attempts comfort through practical reassurances about college applications and fresh starts, while his father mutters about lessons learned and appropriate consequences for poor judgment. But Romeo barely hears their words, his mind trapped in an endless loop, replaying Juliet's expression as the judge's gavel ended their future together. The legal system they trusted to protect their love has instead legitimized its destruction, giving institutional blessing to family hatred disguised as parental wisdom. That evening, alone in his dormitory room, Romeo discovers that the Capulet family has moved with military efficiency to complete Juliet's exile. Her flight to Geneva departed at 6:15 p.m., 3 hours ahead of the original schedule, making any last-minute rescue attempts impossible. The International Academy of Geneva confirms her enrollment in a terse email that provides no forwarding address or communication permissions. Romeo stares at his phone for hours, composing dozens of messages he can never send to numbers that no longer connect to the girl who chose him over her entire world. The finality of her absence settles over him like lead blankets, making even breathing feel like an act of betrayal to their shared dreams. On a bitter February morning, exactly 6 weeks after Juliet's deportation to Switzerland, the headmaster at Camden Preparatory discovers Romeo's body in his dormitory room, victim of what the coroner rules accidental overdose of prescription sleep medication combined with alcohol. His suicide note, written in the careful handwriting that once crafted love poems, contains only a single line: Some burdens are too heavy for 18-year-old hearts to carry. 3 days later, in a sterile dormitory room overlooking Lake Geneva's frozen shoreline, Juliet Capulet reads about Romeo's death through an American news website that treats teenage suicide like statistical data. Her own end comes with pharmaceutical precision sleeping pills saved over weeks, dissolved in hot chocolate on a night when her Swiss supervisors assume she's simply homesick. Her final words, spoken to her roommate minutes before losing consciousness, carry the weight of absolute conviction. Tell them we proved that love can be stronger than family hatred. Tell them we chose each other, even when the world chose against us. Both families, having successfully prevented an unsuitable teenage romance, find themselves planning adjacent funeral services, their victory transformed into shared grief that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. The feud that defined 3 generations finally ends, its costs measured in 2 young hearts that proved more fragile than anyone expected. Westfield Academy observes a moment of silence for both students, while carefully revising their policies on family conflict and campus relationships. The winter formal proceeds as scheduled, but the decorations, white roses and silver branches creating an indoor garden, remind everyone present of the girl whose aesthetic vision outlived her by exactly 47 days.